Hi, I'm Rob.
And I'm Rob.
And this is Ask Rob and Rob.
Hi, welcome to Ask Rob and Rob, your weekly opportunity to get all your property questions answered. This week we've got a really interesting question about the property cycle. Now, you've heard us talk about the property cycle many times if you've listened to any episodes of the podcast in the past, but this is an angle on it that we haven't really talked about before, so it's going to be an interesting one to get into.
But before we listen to that question, I'm sure you've got your own interesting questions, and we'd love to hear from you, because not only you learn, but everyone learns. So this is how you do it. Call 013 808 00035. That's 013 808 00035. Of course, normal rates apply. Or simply go to thepropertyhub.net/podcast, leave your question via either method, and we'll get back to you very soon. Now, that's exactly what... Oh, well, if you do leave a question, make sure you leave your name, because this person didn't. However, we're playing it anyway because it's a great question.
Thanks for all the excellent value you guys have been provided. My question is about the property cycle, and if there is any clues that you can help us to try and understand where an area is in the cycle at a more micro level. So parts of a city, for example, so we can understand when it's a good time to buy or a good time to sell, etc., when it's growing or where it is in the cycle. Thanks a lot.
Yeah, that is a really interesting one. We've sort of touched on the notion of different cycles in a slightly more regional way in the past, because there's a debate about whether London is obeying the general UK property cycle or whether it's on a cycle of its own. So how far can you extend this? Does each city have its own cycle? Does each area of a city have its own cycle? Well, we haven't really talked about this yet, so I don't know what your view of it is, Rob. But I think that each city will have its own cycle to an extent, in that obviously all parts of the UK are moved by the same macro factors. So things like lending, things like interest rates, that's going to be the same for everywhere. So I think you're probably not going to have anywhere that's wildly out of whack. But you do get some cities that are further ahead in the cycle or behind than others. But as for how local you can take this, I personally wouldn't have thought that it applied within a city. What do you think?
I agree. Certainly not within a city, so not road by road, but you can see a ripple effect from a city. So, for example, as we record this podcast now, places like Manchester and Birmingham, and of course London we all know all about, are doing well. And they've started to enter an upward growth part of the cycle. But surrounding towns and smaller cities around these two major hubs have only just started to move, or in some cases haven't moved at all. So you can see that natural ripple effect, you can see that natural cycle. And when you look at it, you can say, with reasonable certainty, if all things remain equal, then we'd expect this area to move next. Now, of course, nothing's guaranteed. However, it makes sense, because the money goes into one area, people buy, people like it, people then start to feel that it's a bit pricey and there's value elsewhere, particularly when elsewhere hasn't moved up in value. The main area continues to rise, and it becomes a trigger point where people just go, the area next to it now is so undervalued, I'm going to go there. And then the same thing repeats further out again. And that's the ripple effect. So, yes, for certainly regional and around cities, but in a city, street by street, postcode by postcode, I wouldn't think so.
No, within a city, there's always going to be areas that are rising and falling, becoming more popular, falling out of vogue, areas where lots of investment is going in. And I'm sure that wherever you're listening to this podcast, within your own town, you'll be able to think of areas where there's been big regeneration of some kind, or there's been shops moving in or something like that that's really lifted an area. But that's not in a cyclical kind of way. So it's not the predictable kind of pattern that we talk about, but it's still something very much to consider when making those investments. Having that kind of street level knowledge, knowing what's coming up, seeing where investment's going, looking at how long properties are taking to sell and let in various areas, because there is always something to consider, but not something, sadly, that you can set your watch by in a cyclical way. So really great question. Thank you for asking that. Those are our views, but we'd really like to hear what you think about it as well. If you go over to the Property Hub forum, you can do a search. You can search for the word cycle, and you'll find that there are some discussions already, or start your own. Let us know to what extent you think the property cycle applies regionally or locally, or if you think that it's all complete nonsense and we're just deluding ourselves that there's any kind of predictability at all. Let us know as well. Always good to have a debate. propertyhub.net/forum is a great place to get that debate started.
It is. So head over there, give us your views, and we'll see what you say. Now, remember, if you'd like to leave a question, you can go to propertyhub.net/podcast, where you can also find all the other podcasts we do as well. But until Thursday, when we'll be back with the Property Podcast, and next Tuesday, when we'll be back with another Ask Rob and Rob, it's time to say bye-bye.
Bye.